typically people talk about the big issues, if you will. Abortion, euthanasia, strategic bombing, fun conversations, not very practical. My whole point is the engineering approach is, what do you face daily? Secrets, white lies, promises you need to make to people. These are where the ethical challenges that most people face lie. I think the biggest problem people have with ethics is they're not conscious enough about them. They think to themselves, well, I'm almost ethical. And then they get pinched in a situation and it's time pressured, it's emotional, it's complex, and they end up doing something they regret later. The worst mistake people make when they're trying to make an ethical decision is they rationalize. They say things to themselves like, everybody else is doing it, or I don't have time to really do it the right way. And these are the traps you fall into that lead to problems later on. There's some easy tests to determine whether or not you're rationalizing. So one is the front page test. So if your action was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, would you feel okay with it? Another is the mother's test. And what would your mother say? Or it can be, there's the role model test. If your kids were going to use your actions as a role model for how they should behave, would you feel okay with it? In applying these ethical principles to the kind of a difficult economy we have right now, I would recommend that businesses first look to themselves as opposed to pointing fingers at other people. So how can I behave in this environment as opposed to worrying about how somebody else may have wronged you? And then when you're looking at yourself, I would tell people to focus on the relationships and not transactions. So how can I use this situation to build deeper relationships with people as opposed to trying to think about how can I get through this difficult time by getting the maximum out of transactions. I think that the challenge in these kinds of situations is people are tempted to cut corners. And from my point of view, cutting corners in a situation like this, although it might get you a little benefit in the short term, will cost you a lot in the long term. So my recommendation to folks is be conscious about your ethics. Think about them beforehand so that when you're in an ethically sensitive situation, you don't get surprised. And it's when you get surprised that bad things typically happen.